Biden wrote in the 70s and 80s, right? Where he talks about raising the minimum wage. He talks about the rights of workers. This is kind of who he is in his very soul. So this is a moment, perhaps, to your point, he was a bit underestimated on that front, which he's quite used to.
Well, that looks like they got the job done. And so much. So one October surprise is over.
One done. A few more to go.
Right. We will see. Thank you, Jen.
Have a great show, Lawrence.
Thank you. Well, Elizabeth Lynn Cheney, as it happens, was born in Wisconsin in 1966 when her parents were graduate students at the University of Wisconsin. 112 years before that, the Republican Party was born in Wisconsin. Liz Cheney was born a Republican. When she was in elementary school, her father was deputy chief of staff in the Republican White House of President Gerald Ford. Dick Cheney moved up to White House chief of staff in the Ford White House, then ran for Congress in Wyoming, then Secretary of Defense for the first President Bush, then vice president for the second President Bush. Liz Cheney is more Republican than anyone named Trump ever could be, because no one in Donald Trump's family actually believes in anything.
In 1976, when I was 10 years old, and I was sealing envelopes for President Ford's re-election campaign, I cast my first vote ever in 1984 for Ronald Reagan. I served in the State Department in both Bush administrations, and I served in the United States House of Representatives for 3 terms, including as the 3rd highest ranking Republican in House leadership. So, in other words, I was a Republican even before Donald Trump started spray tanning.
Liz Cheney went to the small town in Wisconsin today where the Republican Party was born, in the hope that what she had to say would be heard by Republicans like her, who have never voted for a Democrat in their lives.
I know that our security and our freedom depend upon a world in which America, with our allies, leads. And above all else, I know that the most conservative of conservative values is fidelity to our Constitution. I tell you, I have never voted for a Democrat, but this year I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris is standing in the breach at a critical moment in our nation's history. She's working to unite reasonable people from all across the political spectrum. Vice President Harris has dedicated her life to public service. I know that she loves our country, and I know that she will be a president for all Americans. As a conservative, as a patriot, as a mother, as someone who reveres our Constitution, I am honored to join her in this urgent cause.
Liz Cheney echoed her role as chief Republican investigator of Donald Trump on the January 6th committee.
When Donald Trump woke up on the morning of January 6, 2021, his intention, despite having lost the election, was that he would remain president. Rather than accept his loss and concede defeat, he had spent months overseeing a multi-part plan to attempt to seize power and remain in office. He ignored the rulings of the courts. He corruptly pressured state legislatures, including here in Wisconsin, to overturn the results of their elections, Donald Trump watched the attack on television for hours, Sitting in the dining room next to the Oval Office, he refused repeated pleas from his family, from his closest advisors, from the most senior officials in his campaign and in our government to tell the mob to leave. And when Donald Trump finally did speak publicly after hours of violence, after the Capitol had been invaded, he praised the rioters. He did not condemn them. That's who Donald Trump is. Those facts do not come from Donald Trump's political opponents. Those facts come from the people closest to him. They are the ones who testified that Donald Trump did not want to stop the violent attack on our Capitol. When he learned that Vice President Pence was not going to abandon his oath and help Trump seize power, Trump sent out a tweet attacking Pence and further inflaming the mob. One of Trump's aides testified that shortly after that, this aide received a phone call alerting him that the vice president had been evacuated for his own safety from his office off the floor of the Senate. This aide recalled rushing to the dining room to tell Trump, hoping that this information would convince him to take immediate action to ensure the vice president's safety. Instead, after this aide delivered that news, Donald Trump looked up at him and said, "So what?" He said, "So what?" Donald Trump was willing to sacrifice our Capitol to allow law enforcement officers to be beaten and brutalized in his name and to violate the law and the Constitution in order to seize power for himself. I don't care if you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. That is depravity, and we must never become numb to it. Any person who would do these things can never be trusted with power again. We must defeat Donald Trump on November 5th.
We have never seen anything like January 6th until Donald Trump. And we have never seen anything like Liz Cheney campaigning against the Republican candidate for president, trying to elect a Democrat, until Donald Trump. Nowhere in our political history did a large collection of prominent party members turn against their party's nominee for president the way Liz Cheney and so many other prominent Republicans, including her father, have turned against Donald Trump. In the first year of Donald Trump's political candidacy, 2015, I said at the time, if you don't have children or grandchildren, you will be asked for the rest of your life, what did you do to stop Donald Trump? Liz Cheney has now been trying to stop Donald Trump for 3 years. Liz Cheney now has an answer to what has she done to try to stop Donald Trump. Liz Cheney has brought the country to the point that she now calls our time of testing.
So help us right the ship of our democracy so that history will say of us, when our time of testing came, we did our duty and we prevailed because we loved our country more.
When our time of testing came, Liz Cheney passed that test with honor, leaving behind every Republican member of the House and Senate who continue to fail that test. They fail that test because they love their jobs in politics more than they love their country, and they fear that they could lose their jobs in politics the way Liz Cheney lost hers if they follow Liz Cheney in doing and saying the right thing. Liz Cheney knew what she could lose in Congress by opposing Donald Trump's attack on the Capitol and joining an investigation to expose the truth about what Donald Trump did leading up to and on January 6th. First, she lost her leadership position in the House of Representatives. Then she lost her re-election campaign in Wyoming to a wildly underqualified candidate who was then welcomed into the Trump worshipers in the Republican House of Representatives. Liz Cheney has never said that it was a hard choice. She has never said that choosing between her country and Donald Trump was a difficult choice or required heroism of any kind. When our time of testing came, in fact, it was an easy test for Liz Cheney. And the shock is not that lifelong Republican Liz Cheney passed that test. The shock is that almost everyone else, every other Republican holding office in Washington, everyone else in her party failed that test. Vice President Harris is grateful to Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney really is a leader who puts country above party and above self, a true patriot, and it is my profound honor to have your support. And your words today and the reason we are all here today, I think really do underscore perhaps one of the most fundamental questions that is facing the American people in this election. Who will obey that oath? Who will abide by the oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? I have had the privilege. Thank you. And I have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution 6 times in my career, including as Vice President, as a United States Senator, and as the top law enforcement officer of the largest state in our country. Responsible for upholding and enforcing the laws of the state and the laws of the United States was the work I did. And I have never wavered in upholding that oath. And I have always executed it faithfully and without reservation. And therein lies the profound difference between Donald Trump and me. He who violated the oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And make no mistake, he who, if given the chance, would violate it again. I know the vast majority of us agree that upholding the Constitution must be a basic requirement we expect of anyone seeking the highest office in the land. I know the vast majority of us, regardless of your political party, agree we must hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free